Good morning, friends, and welcome to Reedwood and welcome to worship. I was thinking as I drove in that with the time change, those who catch it and are on time to worship are obviously the elect. Well, friends, we come together as a community of faith. We come together as a community of pilgrims on a journey of faith. And on Sunday mornings, we come together for a number of reasons. We come together to learn, we come together to fellowship, and we come together to worship. And we learn by listening, we fellowship by sharing our journeys with each other, and we worship by shifting our focus from ourselves to God. Today is a very special day. As you know, Daniel has been here for the last little over a week dealing with artificial intelligence, and today that will continue. And I've been thinking about artificial intelligence and truth and how difficult it is to discern truth. And I was thinking about this last evening and the fact that Jesus, when he was about to depart, and you can imagine the sadness of the disciples when they were aware that he was leaving, and he made a promise. He said, "When I leave, I will send to you another. I will send to you a comforter." And then he added the words, "And he will lead you into all truth." For this day and age, that's an incredible promise, a promise to comfort them. And so today we worship the God of truth and the God who leads us into all truth. We are God's creation, and created in God's image, we have a hunger for truth. So let me close our call to worship with part of Psalm 24. "The earth is the Lord's and everything in it, the world and all who live in it. Therefore let us look up and live. God is present in all his glory and majesty. Let us go and celebrate. Our loving Lord is here with us and will manifest himself through us. We are God's vehicles and vessels. We represent God in all God's saving power. We are God's beloved and empowered servants in this world that God created." Let us worship together, friends.
Good morning, friends. Guests that we have this morning are particularly welcome. You honor us with your presence, and let me just add, if you don't have a church home, perhaps you'd like to consider the Quaker Way at Reedwood Friends. Friends, twice in the opening chapters of Genesis, God asks human beings, where? In the story of Adam and Eve, human, where are you? There we go. In the story of Cain and Abel, where is your brother? Two interesting questions. And it seems to me that they're related. And these questions I propose this morning are very important for us to hear. I'd like us to begin our thoughts by reflecting for a moment on these two powerful questions in the context of the stories of Genesis. Now, if you want to know what a particular culture believes about human beings and the world around them, listen to their stories of creation. This isn't geological science, of course, but that doesn't mean that it isn't crucially important for us. You see, this is what so many people seem to miss. Just because the two creation stories in Genesis are not supposed to be literal history of the universe, then people dismiss them. That didn't happen. To which I reply in an astonished feeling, but these stories are profoundly true. Listen to the story. In fact, what the story is describing happens every day. Jesus, of course, told powerful stories to teach profound lessons. Even if most people in modern society don't know where the term comes from, I think everybody probably understands what a good Samaritan is. Jesus told the story of the Good Samaritan in order to teach compassion. But, of course, Jesus is not the only ancient Jewish storyteller who have left us with powerful lessons and stories. So being a faithful reader of the Bible, brothers and sisters, doesn't mean that everything is to be taken as literal history. Sometimes being a faithful reader of the Bible means listen to the story. Last week, I made reference to Jesus' story about the 10 bridesmaids. We were thinking about Jesus teaching about what does wisdom mean. And Jesus used the story to teach about shrewd wisdom. 5 of whom were prepared with extra oil. 5 were not prepared. Wisdom in this context seems to have been the lesson, be prepared. So, if I were with those disciples that day, heard that story and said, "Oh, I get it, Jesus, you're asking me to go buy some oil. Okay, I'll be right back." Then I'm afraid Peter or James or John would have looked at me with exasperation and would have said, "Daniel, sit down. Listen to the story." For many years, I tended to agree with the modern view that the story of Adam and Eve was an old Hebrew story of creation that simply featured some ancient storytelling techniques, like the idea of God walking in the garden like a person. I reckoned it was written this way as an interesting contrast to the first creation story, which we know as the 7-day creation story. That one, of course, features God speaking everything into existence, whereas the Adam and Eve story begins with God getting down on God's hands and knees and making a person. As for God walking in the garden, well, I simply considered it simply an older aspect of the story and moved on. And I turned to what I thought were the lessons in the other part of the story. Like, for example, the nature of betrayal of our most intimate relationships. And this is a powerful part of the story, of course. The story of Adam and Eve also suggests that when we turn away from God's instructions for us, this can have catastrophic impact on our relationships with one another. The intimacy of loving partner relationships in the Adam and Eve story breaking because of disobedience. And then the breaking of God's call for compassion in families, and the story of the brothers Cain and Abel and his violence against his brother Abel. And finally, as if building towards a crescendo, it comes to our society violence against one another, to the point, it says, where human beings were so violent with each other that it says in Genesis 6:6 that God was sorry that God had made humankind. And it grieved God to God's heart. What a powerful statement. Violence leads to God having regretted even making us. So these stories present God's intentions for us, stymied again and again by our rejection of God's instructions of compassion toward one another. These are powerful lessons, powerful warnings about the breakdown of God's intended compassion that we are to have for one another. But those two questions started to haunt me. Where are you? Where is your brother? I've started to think more about these questions. In that question, where are you? The word Adam appears, but what's interesting is that it isn't simply Adam, where are you? The word Adam has a definite article. The Adam, the human, the man. God asks the human, where are you? So, is this an ancient Jewish wisdom story for us, presenting God as walking in the garden, apparently not knowing where Adam and Eve have gone, and asking, where are they? Is this just a charming detail of an ancient story? Friends, I have come to believe that it is much more than that. The story writer clearly presumes that God knows very well where we are, and yet asks, where are you? When we want to know if a person is truly present, if their mind is focused and they are thinking clearly, we ask, where are you? Where is your head at? I believe it's another way of simply asking, are you present right now? Are you focused? And then that second question, where is your brother? Now, the stories as presently arranged go nicely together, of course. In the first story, God constructs a world and a universe by arranging spaces first, separating light separating the waters above from the waters below, separating the land from the water, and then proceeds to populate these places. Plants, animals, and then finally people, male and female together at the same time. And that story says, because we are made in the image and likeness of God. Those are two very interesting terms. Image, the Hebrew is tselem. Likeness, the Hebrew is demut. When the first word, image of God, was translated into Greek, they used the term icon. Humans were made as an icon of God. Isn't that interesting? Friends, when you see on television someone giving a press conference for the White House, and there's a podium like this, but then there's a seal there, and that seal is an icon. It means that the person standing behind here is speaking for whatever is represented in that symbol. What an awesome responsibility to be called an icon of God. We are to speak in God's stead. We have been assigned an awesome assignment. We are asked, as soon as it talks about how we were made in the image and likeness of God, male and female. There's something to think about, by the way, little side note. The image of God is male and female. Don't look at me like that. That's what the Bible says. But immediately after that fascinating sentence, it says, and we are to subdue the earth and have dominion. Now, many of us are aware that this verse is often blamed for ecological disaster. Genesis says, rule the earth, and look at what we've done to the earth and to each other. It's a good argument, except for the fact that Scripture doesn't tell us to rule with abandon and irresponsible abuse. Most often, when humans get the idea to rule, they become arrogant and violent, and it is precisely that human violence that Genesis says got so bad that God regretted having even made us. But how are we to rule? It says rule. How are we to rule? My friend, the prophet Ezekiel, criticized the kings of ancient Israel by telling them how they should have ruled, but instead what they did do. Ezekiel says, you have not strengthened the weak. You have not healed the sick. You have not bound up the injured. You have not brought back the strayed. You have not sought the lost, but with force and harshness you have ruled. That, friends, is the biblical ideal of what it means to rule. Bind up the injured, heal the sick, bring back the strayed, seek the lost. Jesus echoes this very call when Jesus said to his disciples, you know that the rulers of the nations, the Gentiles, lord it over them, and their great ones are like tyrants over them. It is not to be that way with you, but whoever wishes to be great among you must be your servant, and whoever wishes to be first among you will be last. In fact, friends, Genesis already hinted at this positive role. When God created the human, in Genesis 2:15, God took the human and made him in the Garden of Eden to till it and to keep it. Again, two interesting terms, to till the garden and keep it. Those two words have a little bit more rich suggestion than simply till and keep. Eved means to serve, to care for. So God places humans in the garden to serve the creation, to care for the creation, and then the second word, to keep it, shamar, means to watch over it. God asks us to care for the world, to watch over it. That's what it means to be the icon of God's presence in this world. Care and watch over. We are created as God's representatives on this earth, and we have clear instructions that we violate to our peril. This garden earth works in a particular way, of course, and there are things we must not do. We keep wanting to eat the fruit of the forbidden tree again and again. We want to burn fossil fuels until our air is unbreathable. Human, where are you? We want to concentrate wealth in the hands of a few elite until tens of millions live desperate lives. Where is your brother? When Britain created weaving machines that dramatically improved producing cotton fabric, what should have been a blessing for humanity became a curse for the destitute workers who were paid a pittance to work these machines, and the curse of slavery in the New World to produce ever more cotton to feed the machines. Did it have to happen this way? Of course not. We thought we knew better than care and compassion. Human, where are you? Where is your brother? Brothers and sisters, we have been created and tasked to represent our Creator in this world. We are tasked to be responsible, to rule God's creation turned over to us, to rule with compassion and wisdom and service to others, not arrogance and violence and dominating over others. It seems to me that Jesus could not have been clearer on this point. And it seems to me that we humans are constantly thinking we know better. That story is so profoundly true. Now, we've been learning this last week about AI, what a powerful tool it is, how it is becoming more impressive with every year that passes. Like many other tools, there are potentially frightful uses, and like many other tools, there are potentially wonderful uses. Over and over again, friends, when we have discovered new tools, we are faced with choices. Do we use these tools to rule with arrogance and violence, or can we use these tools to represent God's compassion and care, to fulfill our task, care for this garden, and watch over it? Last week, I began by asking us to reflect on the fact that media shouts at us all the time, and that AI is one of the hottest topics, especially because it's so easily driven by science fiction. We are deluged with media about AI, often in the most alarming ways possible. And of course, part of that is because clicks on stories become dollars in the pockets of the advertisers, so they want to frighten you. This does not make for wisdom. This last week, Pastor Mark said that one of the most memorable lines from our speaker last week in the Adult Education Hour, and also on Wednesday, our friend Stu, working on his PhD in robotics from Portland State, Pastor Mark said the most memorable line I came away with from Stu was, "Well, I have good news and bad news. The good news is the robots aren't coming. The bad news, the advertisers are." So there's interesting things for those who wish to talk us into things. According to Genesis, we've been here before, haven't we? One last thought about those Genesis stories and our theme for this week. It's interesting how serpents keep turning up. The serpent in Genesis clearly represents a cunning temptation that we can know more than God, that we can understand better than the Creator. And yet, we learned in Matthew 10:16 that Jesus calls on us to be as wise as the serpent. If we were there when he said that, I'm sure we'd be shocked. Wait a minute, Jesus, to be like serpents? Look at what the serpent did in the story of Adam and Eve. It's as if Jesus is saying, yes, like that. Be just as clever as that. Be just as prepared as that. Be just as ready to do the right as they are to do the wrong. If serpents represent the voices shouting at us to do the wrong thing, then Jesus says, be just as clever and prepared to do the right thing, so that we are ready when the question comes, human, where are you? And where is your brother? As Irv referred this morning, we confront falsehoods with truth. And if we don't understand something, friends, then we do a CCS series and we take time to think about it. That's the Reedwood way. Indeed, that's the Quaker way. We fight shrewd preparations by those who want to do the wrong thing by making shrewd and wise preparations to do the right thing. Human, where are you? Where is your brother? Where is your sister? Friends, I believe we have three choices that I'd like to call on us to think about before we go into open worship. We can look the other way and simply say, oh, this isn't church business. We talk about spiritual things, not all this technology stuff. We can answer with Adam, she did it. Or with Eve, it did it. Or with Cain, am I my brother's keeper? But friends, this isn't our way. We've never looked away from the issues that challenge us. Now, there is another option. We could take a principled stand against the use of many kinds of tools that humans have invented. We could become what I call techno-Amish. Now, friends, I'm not joking here. In fact, I deeply admire our Amish brothers and sisters because they have made some principled choices. People make the mistake, by the way, of thinking what the Amish have done is to freeze their lives at a certain time period and say anything modern we won't do. That is not how the Amish have made the decisions they've made. Friends, the Amish come together and they ask one another, what technology will interfere with our community life as the people of God together. So, for example, many Amish have phones. They just put it in a box across the street so that it's not constantly invading human, loving, compassion relationships. They'll use a gas motor to help bale hay into the barn, but they won't drive a car. That's too much speed. That's too much separation. So we could decide on some tools we just simply say no, we won't do it. Or, friends, we can ask, how can Christians of conscience, inspired by the compassion of Jesus, learn to use these tools and use them for good? This is not giving up, but it does mean we need to learn what it can and cannot do and what it should do. I honor friends who have taken one of the two first options, but for me, I believe God calls on us. Where are you? And we must think about this and be ready to use this. Tools, even tools for the wrong reasons, can be transformed. This is so important, for example, for science. There is still a strong opinion in this country that science like computers, science like biology, and religion are somehow enemies and must avoid, at least not be on speaking terms. In this fellowship, Dr. Dwight Kimberly and Dr. Kent Thornburg have worked pretty hard and successfully to prove that this is quite wrong, and have been impressively successful as both teachers and researchers, as scientists and as Christians. Our guest today in the Adult Education Hour, Dr. Randall Reed, is working pretty hard at bringing theology into conversation with AI, and we're pleased that he's going to be joining us today during the Adult Education Hour. Part of our callings, friends, is not only to be prepared for the tools of the future, but to contemplate how to use them for compassion and Jesus-guided goals. So are there dangers in the use of AI as a tool? Yes. The machines can be asked to process the written work of thousands upon thousands of scientists, poets, writers, practitioners, doctors, and lawyers, and then try to apply this toward proposed solutions. But, friends, what are we going to ask it to do? We could ask it to make weapons, or we could ask it to write a song for us based on Micah 6. God has told you, O human, what is good, but to be kind, love justice, and walk humbly with your God.
Dusty trails under skies wide and free, simple words etched in eternity. Oh, mortal, they say what you must be to find the road where true hearts sing. Do justice in all you show, love kindness as the rivers flow. Walk humbly down low and slow. With your God by your side, you'll know. In the shadows of the mountains high, where the eagles soar and the hearts don't lie. The echoes call out and the spirit sighs for justice, kindness, and walking light. Do justice in all you show, love kindness as the rivers flow. Walk humbly down low and slow, with your God by your side, you'll know. In the towns where the weary rove, amid the whispers of the winds that blow, there's a path whispered from above that speaks of mercy and truth below. Granite hearts don't get far, but a silver soul shines like a star. Lift the burden, mend the scar, find your peace wherever you are. Do justice in all you show, love kindness as the rivers flow. Walk humbly down low and slow, with your God by your side, you'll know. With your God by your side, you'll know.
Friends, that was a completely AI-generated song. It was created last week as I was preparing for today's sermon. You're the first public group to have ever heard it. We can ask AI to do wondrous things. We can create imaginary worlds that spark our imaginations like a C.S. Lewis or a J.R. Tolkien. We can ask it to propose peaceful uses of technology. We can resist where money could take it towards ever more powerful weapons. But what we cannot do, my friends, is to ignore this or hope that it goes away. And friends, if that day should come that science fiction talks about so much, if that day should come when we create a machine that is self-aware, that thinks, bringing together AI and robotic technology, if this should ever be real, what some call AGI, artificial general intelligence, what some others have referred to as the singularity. What if a machine can think? The question still haunts us. Human, where are you? If they are thinking, we taught them this. If they are violent, we taught them this. If they are compassionate, we taught them this. And friends, like the theme picture that I've been using, for our series, can we have our pictures back? If this machine should ever be sentient, and if this machine, like the picture we've been using for this series, joins us in meeting for worship, we taught it to do this. We are responsible. That is what God assigned to us. Friends, we may not be the smartest anymore. It was a move of interesting arrogance when anthropologists referred to us as Homo sapiens. Sapiens comes from wisdom, smarts. We reckoned ourselves smart humans as opposed to everything else in the world. Well, the day may come when we're not the smartest. I would call us to consider the rise of Homo curans. C-U-R-A-N-S. What does that mean? Curans, from the word from which we get curator, responsible human. That's what we are called to. Friends, we're about to enter into a period of quiet. This is our Quaker way. We share some thoughts, and we open ourselves to God's presence with us here. If you feel led to share, please stand and a microphone will be brought to you. This is a time of quiet, but also to share thoughts, to pass on wisdom laid on your heart. Sharing out of our silence together, we will then draw to a close this portion of our worship with prayer concerns and announcements. Please do, however, plan to stay afterwards for the adult education hour when our guest, Dr. Randall Reed, visiting from Appalachian State University, who works on the intersection of AI and theology, and we'll have, I know, an interesting conversation. So let us begin now with silence and this question, what the Quakers call a query, to initiate prayerful thought. Friends, what can it mean for us to hear God's call to represent God's compassionate care for this garden, earth, using our tools, all of our tools, with wisdom?